Well, when it comes to the hype and anticipation for Epic Universe, one of the biggest attractions that people want to check out when visiting this park is the Battle at the Ministry. And currently, it's, let's just say, a finicky ride to be able to experience.
It's being finicky.
And it seems like that the issues with this ride have been rather persistent. And this was long even before we had the previews going on right now. And this was even something during team member previews where it wasn't even running during most of those. And given that this ride is in a virtual line only system, and there's lots of frustration around that system and the reliability of this ride, we're going to go into what we know about this ride, where it currently stands. And is Universal going to be able to get this fixed before the opening day, which is May 22nd, in just a couple of weeks here? So we're going to go through this article and give some thoughts on it here. So hi, I'm Jared with Capture the Magic. And they say here at Block Mickey, Harry Potter virtual line, a broken, unfair system at Epic Universe. It says, guests visiting Universal Epic Universe during its early opening period wishing to ride the impressive Harry Potter and the Battle at the Ministry attraction are required to join a virtual line, Universal's version of a virtual queue. The virtual line requirement has quickly become the worst part about visiting Epic Universe. I can attest to that. I agree. It also adds a level of stress, like because you have to have drops at 11 a.m., 3 p.m., and 6 p.m. And just having to just be on your phone and like you have to just sit there and be like, okay, we gotta try and do this, and the frustration of, at least for us, not getting one. So it adds a level of stress to your park day on top of just trying to enjoy yourself in the theme park. And Universal Orlando needs to find a way to improve the experience or get rid of it entirely by the time May 22nd grand opening rolls around. I agree with that. And I think in an ideal world, they wouldn't have it, but they're running it because at this point, the only way it runs is by basically using that, essentially, or you would have to evacuate the entire queue if you just had a normal standby, and that standby can hold up to 7-8 hours worth of queue in there. So if you were running into that situation, that's a mass of people that would come out of that queue at one time if you were just doing a standby and had to basically shut the ride down and evacuate the queue there. So it's kind of at this point with the ride, it seems like almost a no-win situation here, at least from perhaps running it from Universal's perspective. They say Harry Potter and the Battle at the Ministry is a world-class attraction and worthy of the hype and praise it is receiving during this early opening period for Epic Universe. The attraction blends physical and digital scenes in a way that seems like actual magic throughout an experience that contains the best audio animatronic figures we have ever seen in any theme park, and a storyline that is rewarding for fans of the Harry Potter franchise. When you combine that with a queue experience that is the best in the world, that's pretty lofty praise, you have a complete attraction experience that may be second to none. So obviously, they have very high praise of this. I haven't got to experience the queue, so I'm just going off of what everybody else has told me about this ride. We've been to the park twice, and I haven't even sniffed this ride at all. However, the only way to experience the ride right now is through a virtual line. In theory, virtual queues can be a useful tool for a theme park. However, the virtual line experience right now for Battle at the Ministry is an unmitigated disaster.
This is the worst!
In our opinion, it needs to be radically overhauled or removed entirely by the time opening day rolls around in less than 3 weeks. Because you'll see here, they got some pictures of what it looks like. So when you're in the app, it'll be grayed out and then it'll go blue. So a couple of times for us, it never even got to the blue. And when we did, I actually got at one point to be able to pick a time to be able to get it. And then when I went to pick it, it said no longer available. I think part of the issue, if I were to guess, I have a bit of a tech background. I personally think it's a server issue potentially, because I'm wondering if it's either the server, just the way the app is set up, is it's not really prepared for the mass amount of people at one time on that app, which I do think would be a server issue. So I don't know if they just need to upgrade the servers, like use more servers, get better servers. I think that's part of it. It also could just be the app itself and the way it's coded, that it's not able to really handle that much demand at one time. Because you got to think, at one time, you've got thousands of people on a single app trying to get on one thing. I mean, it does take a lot of bandwidth and a lot of server space, and they may just either not have the server or the code, whatever it is, set up to handle that. But whatever that issue is, they do need to figure it out and fix it. But this is also why you do previews on some level, to be able to work through these kinks here. But still, it's a frustrating thing if you're wanting to ride this, and obviously a lot of people do, myself included. So they go into how it works here. So, I mean, like I just said, you go into the app, you select the ride, then you get into this screen here where you can click on a virtual queue. And then if you're lucky enough to get to this point, and I got here one time, sometimes it'll load and say no times are available, but a lot of times it'll say right here, unfortunately, there are no virtual line times available for the number of people you requested. If you're lucky to get to this point, you can select a time, but then many times it also pops up and says, sorry, this slot is no longer available. And then you can keep trying on some level. And if you're lucky, you see this screen, which I've never seen. I've never personally seen that screen myself. So that's kind of how the operation of this app works and trying to get a virtual queue for it. And you can only do it on your phone. So if you have to have a phone, either a iPhone or an Android to do this, which I don't like a lot of phone, like necessarily relying on your phone to do a lot of things in a theme park. It's the same thing I talk about with Disney that I don't like. So it's not as bad in terms of how you do everything on your phone, but this is still a major ride and component that people want to check out that you have to do on your phone. And there's a lot of things can go into making that work or not work, and it's another level of potential frustration, obviously, that guests can experience. Now, somebody did say in the comments that had a pretty successful time getting virtual queues that instead of you'll get to this screen, you can go back and forth, and they were saying to just stay in this screen and then wait for this blue icon to pop up, and that's what worked for them. I don't know. It strikes me, I don't think it's as much skill with this as there was some skill, or at least figuring out how to do it with like Disney's virtual queue. So that's what that person said. They said they had good luck. You'll hear things. I've also heard people saying going back and forth and keep trying, even if it keeps saying there's nothing available, to keep doing it. Sometimes you have success. It says you may even hear other guests yelling with joy around you as they get a virtual line spot. In fact, we've heard guests yelling with joy before our virtual line button even turned blue. That's exactly what happened with us too. It doesn't turn blue sometimes for anybody at the same time. Well, what were we doing wrong? He said, luck of the draw is what we were told by a guest services team member. That was perhaps worse to hear than the happy guests around us. In short, we want to feel like we're doing something to control the process. Ultimately, there really isn't much you can do. But if you want to feel productive, you can tap back and forth as fast as you can until the virtual line button turns blue, which again, that's what the person was saying in the comments, said not to do that. I don't know which way's better, but that's what they were saying. Now, the issue with it, once you get to this screen, you get here, then you add the party members. And like they were saying here, every time you do that, it refreshes. So it's like if you have a bigger party, it may not, let you do it, or worse, you have one person, you might get lucky and do it, but then you may not be able to ride it with other people. Like that's part of the issue with that. The way the system currently is set up. A loading indicator replaces the failure message, and for a brief moment, you have hope. Either the same failure message appears and you choose to continue or give up, or you see something magical. If you're lucky, you might actually get to see some available times. If you see times, act fast, click on one, and we always choose the earliest available, and quickly tap the submit button when it lights up blue. Chances are you'll see a pop-up message that says, sorry, this time slot is no longer available.
Jesus God, no.
To channel Harry Potter, you must not tell lies, Universal Orlando app. If you see this error message, it may be true, but it's most likely lying to you. Click OK, and then click on a time again and press the submit button, and you'll have to do this a few more times before either the time slot changes or disappears, or you get lucky and secure a virtual line return time. If you're successful, the app will explode with digital confetti, and you'll be taken to a screen with a QR code.
That's so simple.
When it's your time to return to Ministry of Magic, team members will scan your QR code to redeem your virtual line and allow you to enter the queue. So it's the process of securing a virtual line. It's a frustrating, entirely imperfect process, but it's necessary right now. As to the why of the virtual line right now, it's simple. Harry Potter and the Battle of Ministry is very unreliable. In a perfect world, the virtual line is in place to protect you from waiting 6 hours in a standby queue to ride a single attraction. In reality, the virtual line is currently in place to protect Universal, which has an unreliable headliner attraction on its hands. The idea is that if Universal can restrict and manage the number of guests who could have a shot at riding it, it makes it easier to manage the guest experience when the attraction inevitably breaks down. It says, now, I said almost forgivable. Harry Potter and the Battle of the Ministry is now closed for a week during the early opening period. That thought is that Universal is taking the time right now to try and fix whatever is so terribly broken with the ride. While we don't know what is wrong with the ride, we can start to make some guesses based on our experience with multiple breakdowns so far. Now, I have heard from those that have worked for Universal, from multiple people, that at least one of the issues here is the code on the ride, in that I think this ride is able to get 16 to 17 ride vehicles, or that's the goal, at the same time running, and they've currently only been able to get maybe 4 or 5 at a time to work, maybe even less on bad days. So Obviously, the ride capacity is not very high and it breaks down a lot. So they're restricting a lot of just the sheer amount of people that can ride it due to that issue. So currently, they just haven't been able to get the ride capacity up, and is the reliability as well. That is the main thing I have heard from those that have told me some things that work for Universal. So I do know that much. He says the prevailing theory is that there's an issue with the safety sensors on the attraction. In recent previews, team members have been giving verbal instructions to guests to make sure they don't cross their legs, that their feet stay flat on the ground, and that they keep their back pressed against their seat at all times during the ride. In a ride that bounces around quite a bit, he says, think about Star Tours. This is not always an easy task, and you sometimes find yourself focusing more on your own motions than the ride. Yeah, I mean, if you're really focusing on just everything but what you're experiencing, that would definitely take away from the enjoyment of the attraction for sure. I would agree with that. Says all that to say, I'm not sure that there is a single thing that is wrong with the Harry Potter ride right now. In our glowing review of the attraction, we pointed to the technology in the article title. That wasn't by mistake. The tech in the Battle at the Ministry is impressive, but it seemingly is very prone to failure, and that's not even addressing the unmitigated disaster of the virtual line system. I mean, from what I've heard about this attraction, you had multiple ride manufacturers working on it, a very complex ride. Think very, in terms of the type of ride this is, very similar to Rise of the Resistance. And I love that ride. It's a great ride. But once you ride that, it kind of became understandable why that ride had a lot of issues. So many moving parts to it, so many things going on. And there's just lots of chances for things to not work properly. And that's why many times that ride will go into B and C mode. If things aren't working, you can still run people through it, but it's not the A show. It's not the way they would like it to show, but at least the ride is not shut down. I don't know if this ride doesn't have a B mode or C mode yet, as they may still be trying to work through this. And again, this is still just previews. Like, it's one of those things. The Universal is charging a pretty, I mean, it's somewhat discounted, but still a pretty lofty price for preview tickets. But with that said, this is a time period where you try and work through some of these issues, and it's understandable that a lot of these rides are not going to be working 100% all the time during a preview period. I mean, when we were there on Thursday, Stardust Racers wasn't even running all day. Curse of the Werewolf wasn't running all day. My Kart Madness was up and down part of the day. Monsters Unchained was offline for a little bit. And we were in line for Hiccup's Wing Gliders. It went down for like 20 minutes while we were in line. So a lot of attractions are still working through the kinks, trying to work through like, operating system issues, like get the, team members trained and things like that. So it's understandable it's there, but this is still just something like this ride being as highly anticipated as it is, the word of mouth about it, the reviews about it, a lot of people want to check it out. And this is, I've said for a while, this is the potential Achilles heel of this park in the early period until they get this worked out, where it could leave a lot of guests feeling very disappointed, not only with not being able to ride this ride, but also just with the virtual line system in general. And that's not even talking about if they use virtual line to get into the portals. And basically, Universal has said that is a essential backup system if they need it. You may have to use virtual lines to get into the portals as well. So that is definitely something that they need to work through, or at least try to, before the park opens. So the virtual line system as currently implemented is worse than anything that we ever experienced at Walt Disney World. And yes, that includes the early weeks and months of the Rise of the Resistance virtual queue, which was so bad of an experience that we wrote an article titled, "Don't Visit Disney's Hollywood Studios Right Now." He goes, full disclosure, I'm at the same point with Epic Universe right now as it relates to offering advice on visitation timing. I mean, it's one of those things. If people are wanting to experience this ride, or really the park at its peak, or really when everything's running well, I would probably agree that waiting to go here is not a bad idea, considering how much money people are likely to spend to go. And I completely get if people just say, I'm going to wait until things run a bit smoother. From a guest perspective and trying to get the most for your money, I do understand that as probably something that if people were asking me, should I go in the opening period? Unless you're just wanting to go just to be there when it first opens, or you're trying to cover this, personally, I would probably, if it was just me, just as a general fan, I would probably wait. I would just want to wait until seeing how this runs, seeing if these issues, start getting ironed out, before really spending a lot of that money to go to a park that may not be fully ready, at least as we know it right now. So the virtual line is more akin to a Taylor Swift Ticketmaster experience than a theme park experience. The vast majority of guests who visit Epic Universe will simply never get a chance to ride the best ride in the park. The one thing that Epic Universe has going for it is that Hollywood Studios didn't have going for it back when Rise of the Resistance opened, is that everything at Epic Universe is new. Even if you don't ride Battle of the Ministry, you will get to experience a ton of new things at Epic Universe. That's true. I mean, that is something about that, but at the same time, without this ride being online and having obviously the massive demand it will have and how many people can hold in the queue, it is going to cause lines at other attractions and areas of the park to get much bigger. So if you don't have your headlining attraction running, obviously those people are going to go other places, and that creates other issues, just kind of a cascading effect in a theme park. And we've seen this like Magic Kingdom, if there's like 6 or 7 rides down at a time, which has happened sometimes, all of a sudden the wait times just skyrocket because obviously those people are going to go somewhere, and a lot of people go into other rides, and it causes wait time issues other places. It says, in speaking with guest service team members to understand what I might be doing wrong when attempting to get a virtual line, the first and most prevalent response that I received was, it's a luck of the draw. That's simply not good enough. As far as I can tell, the reason that it's a luck of the draw is because the virtual line system is very poorly built. The first indication that the system is broken and unfair is not what you see, but what you hear. I'll never forget the early mornings in late 2019 and early 2020 on Grand Avenue when hundreds, if not thousands of guests lined up for Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, all reacted to securing or missing out on virtual queue spots in unison. I remember those days vividly because you'd be in the park to do it, and you would hear cheers or you would hear people just mad, and a lot of people would just leave. So you would see almost a mass exodus of people leaving the park if they weren't able to get a virtual queue first thing in the morning. I remember that just multiple times, seeing that at Hollywood Studios. While the virtual queue system policies would change in the months and years to come, the system itself was reliable enough to open up to all guests at once, and that's not the case with the Universal Virtual Line. So going back to hearing how broken the Universal Virtual Line system is, we have experienced hearing cheers in Epic Universe from guests before we even saw our virtual line button activate. That's the same thing I experienced as well. I think it's a demand thing. It seems like the back-end system is not powerful enough to create a synchronized, fair virtual line drop for all guests. It's one thing to have a low capacity for the unreliable ride. It's another thing entirely to have an app functionality that is so broken that it essentially picks winners and losers before you even get a chance to try. You know, it's the same thing with a website can go down when too much traffic goes to it. Some people are just going to basically see a thing that pops up and say it's not available. So I kind of think that may be what happens with it. They just may not have enough server space. So maybe this downtime is to fix some of the stuff in the attraction, maybe the sensors and things, but it also could be maybe they're putting all hands on deck trying to rework or get the virtual line system to work better. And if it is a server issue, that is a fixable thing. I mean, you can literally just get more servers to handle it. But if it's a code issue, I know a lot more about websites than I do apps, but if it is a code issue, I mean, if you throw enough money at a problem, you can get something fixed pretty well. But again, if it's like a broken code thing, you would almost have to rework that from the ground up, depending on how it was built. And the virtual line just may not be built for that many people. So I don't know if they have enough time in a week or 2 weeks to really get that fixed if that's the issue. But if it is a server issue, I do think that is something that they can fix. So I suppose there is some hope on that end that it's just a server thing. We have complained in the past with the virtual queue system at Disney World was essentially a lottery system due to how quickly the spots filled up. At this point, creating a functionality similar to a lottery system would be an upgrade for the Universal Virtual Line experience. It's simply unfair how it operates right now. And to be clear, this will only get worse once the park opens to all guests and the demand on the system doubles. Just like ride engineering needs a quick win with fixing this ride, the tech teams need a quick win with fixing the app, or the opening weeks and months will be an unmitigated disaster. But it would definitely be something that would not be a great thing. It would be a black eye on this park if your main headlining attraction was essentially a lottery system, and most people, especially as more people would be there. You know, right now, even with previews, it's still very busy, but opening day, once this park is officially open, you're going to have double the amount of people in this park that you have right now. You're going to have a lot of people not happy about it. Now, that doesn't mean they still couldn't enjoy other aspects of the park, but it is going to be something that is not a good look for Universal, having this brand new park with this brand new ride, and most people in a given day aren't going to be able to experience it. So I don't know if I would call it an unmitigated disaster. For this ride particularly, yes, that would be an unmitigated disaster. For an overall park experience, it potentially could. It would depend on each person. Unlike the Disney World system, there is no way to link your tickets with your friends and family. Like the functionality doesn't exist at all within the Universal Orlando app. Well, it did, but then people are having issues getting their parties linked up, which is another issue with this app. So they changed it because people weren't showing up in the thing. So then they changed it to party size. So again, I think there is some app functionality in here that does need to be fixed and improved upon. It is more likely that the virtual line spots are for too few people than too many. The reason for that is simple. The process is so broken, and and the spots are gone so fast that guests are probably more concerned with getting a return time instead of selecting the correct number of people in their party. That has happened to us where I was so excited to see a return window that I immediately tapped it to get a virtual line for a party of 1. Thankfully, team members at the battle were accommodating and allowed us to enter as a party of 2. Either way, because there is no ticket linking, there's no way for Universal to validate that you're only requesting a virtual line for the amount of people in your party. Yeah, I remember I clicked it, I had 1, and then it showed up a time, and I said, I need 2, or I think we need 4, and I went to click 4, and then the times were all gone. And I probably should have just got the 1 and just did it and just tried to talk to somebody and if it went all the way through. But that is something about this is you change your party type, and all of a sudden it refreshes, and there's nothing there. And that part is stressful and not the best experience. To that end, I would suggest that getting as many people and devices in your group as possible to try for virtual line spot. The system is broken and you need to give yourself the best possible chance of success. I would agree with that. And there's also cases of people being able to get virtual queues from not in the park. You're not supposed to be able to. They talk about geofencing in this article. You're supposed to have to be in the park to be able to do it. But there have been cases of people online talking about they were able to get a virtual queue from states away. And they did happen to give, they shared it with somebody that was there that day, so it got used. But it definitely seems like there is a lot of functionality with this app that is just not working correctly. And so that's something, personally speaking, I think should have been worked out months ago instead of waiting until the last minute here where you're up against the opening of the park and then just trying to more than likely patch fix this app, because I have a hard time believing you're going to completely rework this app from the ground up in just a couple of weeks here. Maybe they have been working in the background. Like sometimes with websites, you kind of build things offline. They could potentially have been working on a system that just wasn't ready yet, and they're using this time to transition that over. That's possible. I haven't heard anything about that. If I was in charge of that, personally speaking, if I would have known this was an issue, we need to rework this, that's what I would have done with it, and then bring it online, give yourself a couple of weeks maybe to test it out, hoping that it works better. But still, either way, even if it is an improved app, you're still going to have to work through issues that you just didn't get in your own testing. So that's still pushing the limits of, up against a park opening. If you find yourself staring at a screen that's a return time button, consider yourself lucky. When they click on the button and hit submit, you'll probably be told that the time slot is no longer available. So this is a good error message that I wrote about earlier. This isn't a guarantee of success, but seeing an actual return time window is further than 80% of guests who will get into the process. This time slot is no longer available message that is likely a lie. So according to Alicia Stella, this message is basically a pretty server error message. So I had thought that before. I was going to give her credit and read that part in this, but that is something that I've kind of wondered about, because from a computer standpoint, those things like a server error can pop up. You could just have it say anything really. And I kind of felt using it the other day that was the issue, that it was actually a server error, but they're just having the wording saying that time slot's no longer available. Because if you keep trying, a lot of times you'll still get something. And that's kind of sums up the issues with the Battle at the Ministry is you have the ride issue itself. At least part of it I know of is being code and ride capacity. Some of it is also the unreliability of it. It could be the floor sensors. And it is going to be shut down for a week during these upcoming previews, seemingly to fix the problems with this. So hopefully during this time, if they know what the issues are, they can go in there and get these fixed without the ride having to run all day long. Because currently, if they're still trying to fix these issues, they would be doing this at night between when the park closes and it reopens the next day. So this would give you ample time, if you did know the issue, to get in there and try and fix them during its down period. I still have my doubts that the app itself is going to be fixed completely. Now, in terms of with this park, is it going to mean if this ride is still having its issues that this is a failure or Epic Universe is a failure? I don't think it points to it being a failure. It's not great. It's not something you want, and it's definitely going to impact the guest experience. But there's still a park full of new attractions, new lands, new foods for people to check out. So it's not like they have nothing to do. But again, if this ride's not working properly, it is going to impact wait times. And we were there just on Thursday, and so it was a very different experience from the time we were there before, which was during team member previews, as I think the longest we waited was 45 minutes. It just wasn't packed. It wasn't full that day. And here with these was much busier, a lot more waiting. And this, again, is not even close to the park capacity that you're going to see when this park is fully open. So this ride and other rides having reliability issues will impact the guest experience from just wait times and things like that. So I think potentially, maybe if everything's running like it's supposed to run and you have a full park, the wait times may not be that bad. But given it's a brand new park, it's very, very likely, if not just basically just going to happen, that some of these rides are going to go down periodically, it's going to make wait times balloon up in other areas of the park. And that itself is going to lead to, not the best guest experience, because nobody wants to wait in line all day long. It's just not fun. We waited an hour and a half for Hiccups. And while I love that ride, it's not worth an hour and a half wait, nor are mini rides worth an hour and a half long wait. I mean, outside of Hagrid's, maybe this ride and a couple other rides, I'm not willing, at least going into it, just being like, yeah, I'll wait 90 minutes to ride this ride. It's very few and far between that I think most people are willing to wait that long to ride some of these rides without being really annoyed by it, especially when you have multiple rides in the same park having the same issue. So I do think, in general, you could look at Epic Universe having an issue on wait times in general, but especially with this ride and other rides not running properly, that just makes the problem even worse. We'll have to wait and see. You are pushing against the clock here of this park opening in just a few weeks, and this headlining ride here is still not running well. And from what I have heard and what I've seen, it doesn't seem like it's running any better than it was a couple of months ago. In an ideal world, it reopens and everything runs just great and they fix it all. But again, I feel like that may have been, if they would have known the issue, maybe that's something they could have done weeks ago. I don't know. There's a lot of ways you could look at that. And maybe they have made some breakthroughs and really narrowed down what the issue is. I would assume they're using a lot of manpower and money to throw at this problem to figure it out. Obviously, theme park rides are more complicated than ever, more technology, more moving parts. So there's a lot more things that go into making a ride like this run versus like a Teacups ride. Rides have just gotten a lot more complicated, a lot more immersive, a lot of things going on, which gives you a lot more potential for things to break down. But we're going to be their opening day that they do get this fixed. I would like to even just go through the queue. That would be great. I would like to at least check that out, but I would really like to ride this ride, as would many, or if not most people going to Epic Universe when this park opens to check it out. That's currently where it stands with Harry Potter and the Battle of the Ministry. I've never done a full video on just what the issue is potentially with this, where it currently stands, but that is the current status of this ride, how you have to experience it, what it's like to experience it. And it's a very stressful and frustrating experience nonetheless. Even if you get a virtual line, it's still going to be a frustrating or somewhat stressful experience to do that. But most people that have been going to previews have not gotten to ride this. I think undoubtedly you talk about over time. I mean, they got Rise of the Resistance figured out. That ride had issues for a long time. That has become much more reliable. So, over time, they will get this fixed. I have no doubt about that. It's just whether or not they're going to get this fixed before the opening day. Obviously, Universal is excited about Epic Universe. A lot of people are excited to go, but there are still many issues that need to be worked out before this park opens, and they're running out of time here. Got a couple weeks for the park opens, so we'll see if they get this fixed, what the reports back on this are, and maybe Universal can pull a Hail Mary here, get everything fixed, and it's running just fine. If I was betting, I don't know if I'd bet on that. I might bet it improves a little bit. Maybe they're able to get more capacity going, maybe a little bit more reliable with some of those floor sensors, but I would guess they're not going to fix all the ills of the virtual line system and this Battle of the Ministry attraction in just a couple of weeks before the park opens. And I will be sure to make another video if things change on this, if it improves, if it gets worse. Hopefully it doesn't get worse. And see, what it looks like if you're looking to go the opening time period, what you can expect, and where it looks at that point. But either way, that's going to be it, though, for this video. If you like this video, please like it and subscribe to the channel. And let us know in the comments, do you think Universal is going to be able to get the issues fixed with Harry Potter and the Battle of the Ministry? Or do you think this is going to linger into the park opening and be an issue for guests? And until next time, we will see you in the parks.